What's up, you guys? Matt with Texas Edge. Are you kidding me? Come on! Today we're looking at a house that's about 8 or 9 years old, so come with me and take a look at what we find. One of the first things I noticed whenever I came up to this house is the way this tile appears to be all wet. It's nice to have tile on the front porch, but it's not raining now. It hasn't rained lately, and yet this tile is soaking wet, which leads me to believe that it might be a trip hazard. What happens, I believe, in certain conditions or under certain humidity, this is hitting dew point and starting to create a ton of condensation. And so, again, tile looks nice, but it can actually be hazardous, at least if it's not the right tile. Maybe a slate would work a lot better here. Since this house is the age that it is, this panel was put in before we were required to have an electrical disconnect on the outside of the house. Now, we find this situation in most of the houses that we see nowadays because the electrical disconnect on the outside of the house has all the bonding and stuff inside of it. But this house, being that it's 8 or 9 years old, it was built before that was a requirement. That's the reason why we have a main disconnect inside here, and this is the main panel. So all that bonding between grounds and neutrals should be happening inside this panel. So one of the first things that I noticed when I opened this box is that we have a square D breaker in an Eaton panel. Ideally, we want all of these breakers to match the manufacturer. And all of these are Eaton except that one. And so ideally, we would change that one breaker. It does seem to fit pretty good, but still, I think it's best to go ahead and change that to the same manufacturer so that we don't run into any issues. The next thing I want to talk about is AFCI. But before I go on any further, I can already hear the AFCI haters.
Telling me it's not necessary, I hate AFCI, it's a waste of money.
Look, whatever. As a home inspector, we are required to point out whenever these are either not functioning or not there when they're supposed to be. It is a safety feature. Honestly, I can kind of understand why you're upset with AFCI because it's one of the newer styles of electrical protection that we have. And that's always like goes through some growing pains and things, and definitely as they keep increasing the areas where we need them, any little problems that we have with that type of device is going to obviously, we're going to have more and more problems. It has gotten a whole lot better. These right here are giving us some trouble, so I'm going to show you what it is. As an inspector, I want to test to make sure that these do trip, and that one does. I don't really love the sound that it makes, but it does trip. But that one does not. This one does. Let's see, does that one? No, that one doesn't trip. That one's making a noise. Doesn't look like it's going to trip. Anyway, you get the idea. I had a few of them over here, like this one here. That one did. That one did. That one did. But this one was giving me trouble. And then that one didn't trip at all either. So looking on the inside of the panel, we got a couple of other problems here. Now, you'll notice that we got 20 amp breakers. We got 15 amp breakers. And if you look, the 20 amp breakers are hooked up to a 12 gauge wire, and the 15 amp breakers are on a skinnier wire. This is a 14 gauge wire. But the problem is when I look at this 20 amp breaker right here, that wire doesn't look like a 12 gauge to me. So get my tester out here. This is specifically designed to slide over the insulation on these wires, and you can see that it slides right over, and that 20 amp breaker is hooked up to a 14 gauge wire, which means that that breaker is oversized for that wire. Now another thing that I'm noticing is that we have no bond between neutrals and grounds. We have our grounds on a bus bar down here, neutrals on this one, neutrals on this one. These are connected together, but we don't have any type of bonding strap or any type of bonding screw connecting the grounds to neutrals inside this main panel. And so that definitely needs to happen. As an inspector, we're going to write this up in the report as deficient and recommend that we have somebody come out here and take a look at the stuff and get it fixed up. Now looking in the backyard, it's starting to tell a different story. We have a generator on this property, and so we have a Generac panel here on the outside of the house. This should have all the bonding between grounds and neutrals inside it, which makes it unnecessary for it to be, and in fact, we don't want it to be in the sub panel in there. So it sounds like they probably did everything right, but let's open up this panel and check it out. All right, yeah, much as I suspected, since this actually is acting as the first means of disconnect, they have a grounding bus bar up here with all the grounds run to it. And then it's running down here where some additional grounds and some neutrals are run to it. So we have bonding between grounds and neutrals in the first means of disconnect and not in the second means of disconnect. And so they actually did it right. They did a good job. All right, I'm coming up on the sprinkler backflow preventer, and I kind of like what they've done here. They have some rock along the base, which, it's nicely insulated, the pipes are. This rock allows us to use on-trimming equipment around this area instead of getting it right up close to the pipes, because that usually chews all that insulation up and then leaves us vulnerable to freeze damage. The one thing that's bothering me a little bit is that the valve is off. And we haven't, even though it's actually winter here in Houston right now, we haven't had any real freezing temperatures or any concerns about that. And so usually when I find these things off, it means that something's leaking. I'm going to test this system a little bit later, and so I do want to turn it on. And so I am going to just get it straightened out here so I can get it on and see what happens here. So I'll be a little easy with it. And honestly, it doesn't appear to be leaking, so maybe they did a really good job in draining and maybe covering this thing for the winter last season, and maybe it just hasn't been on since then. I mean, the grass is still alive, but there are a lot of weeds, so it could be the case. But we'll test the sprinkler system in a little while, but so far so good, and I do like this rock situation down here, and we don't appear to be leaking, so good stuff. Coming along the back side of the property, we see a few windows here, and we got some issues going on with them. Okay, so this one, and this one all appear to be suffering from a failed thermal seal. This one is more prominent. You can see it a lot better than you can on these other ones, but I'll see if you can pick this up on the camera, because all three of these windows have this failed thermal seal. And so basically the seal and argon gas that's in between the two panes has failed, and these windows are losing their insulating properties, but more than anything, it shows up as this real odd discoloration, really ugly discoloration on the windows. And so more than anything, it's really an aesthetic thing. It's very common to find, but you can see that over time it just gets to look really bad. Now, the window itself doesn't have to be replaced, but the glass needs to be replaced. The double pane of glass, each one that's affected would need to be replaced. Of course, like I say, this one's the ugliest one, but the other ones, they're suffering from it, and they're eventually going to look like this one too. All right, so now I'm up here on the roof, and obviously it's going to rain here soon. It's actually sprinkling rain now, and so I want to get this done quick, but I want to show you a couple of things. This roof, I mean, 8 or 9 years old, should show some signs of age. It's not really showing me that. What it's showing me is that it might have gotten replaced sometimes. So there might have been like a storm come through here and tear apart this roof. Anyway, we still have some issues going on here, so let me show you what they are. Check it out. First and foremost, I do not like satellite dishes for more than one reason, but I especially do not like them mounted to the roof. Now, this one is all fine and good, but this one right here, the old one, look at how caved in it is down here. We have definitely got some moisture damage going on in this area, and so yeah, we're gonna have to look with a thermal camera and see if we can see anything. But that decking underneath that satellite dish there, or that satellite dish mount, that's gonna be all rotted. Also, moving up a little bit, we got the dryer vent right here. And the problem that I have with it is, I mean, it terminates through the roof, right? So none of us like that, but the termination is clogged, and so we don't like that. And plus, it has this sort of, not really, I wouldn't call it a screen, but definitely some type of grated material over the end of it that can be pulled out that would keep it from catching all of this lint. So it needs to be cleaned out at the very least, and then that little screen type situation needs to be removed. Furthermore, we have all of these exposed nails, and this isn't the only place of the roof that this is going on, but it looks like maybe when they replaced the roof, they, tacked down some of this stuff and didn't seal over the nails, and some of them are starting to rust, some of them haven't yet, but these are all potential areas of moisture intrusion. Now, there's a couple of other small things. Before I get down though, I want to show you one final thing on this water heater flue. Check it out. It is the flange down here that is lifted up. This is an area where wind-driven rain can just come inside the house and potentially get some moisture intrusion inside the house, or at least in the attic space. And so that definitely should be in better shape. This one, you can see, is covered up by shingles. This is perfect. This is how it should be. The furnace flue is actually the same way. But this one here has the edge sticking out, and then it's lifted up. So we don't like that. Potential for moisture intrusion for sure. All right, are you dying to know what's going on inside the attic? Yeah, me too. Let's go check it out. All right, so I mean, pretty standard so far. We'll take a look around at some equipment, but what I really want to know is if we can see that area where the satellite dish was mounted. And it looks like it's right there. Okay, let's go in for a closer look. All right, you see all that rotted decking there? And right where those satellite mount screws are? Yeah, that's not good. This is the main reason why I don't like these things mounted to the roof. This is what it causes a lot of the time. So additionally, up here in the attic space right here, we have the dryer vent that we were looking at when we were on the roof. Now, you notice that the termination was clogged on the roof. Well, you can actually see if you look close that lint has started to come through the termination cap a little bit here and even land a little bit here on the attic floor. It's just a little bit right now, but this is one of the things that you really want to get in front of because you don't want a ton of lint coming into this attic space because we have our gas-fired appliances right here next to it. And obviously dryer lint is very flammable, go up in flames immediately. And so this is definitely something they want to get cleared out right away. Now, in addition to that, I come down here and I look at the HVAC system, and we got a significant amount of rust in the pan, which tells me that there's been, a lot of water in the pan at some point. The problem with this is once it has more water in the pan, we don't know how long it's going to hold up before it's just going to give out and then water just come into the house. Now, it does have a float switch on it, and so that's fine. So water, if it does collect in there, as long as the bottom holds up, then it'll shut off by the time it reaches that switch. But if the bottom rusts out, that float switch really doesn't do anything at all. Additionally, we have some condensation buildup around the drain pipes here. The primary drain line looks like there's condensation building up around it and dripping into the pan. So there's a little bit of water in the pan right now. I fear that maybe we have somewhat of a clog or something going on, but I don't think that drain line is actually functioning the way it's supposed to. Plus, that area where these pipes come out of the evaporator coil here really needs to be sealed so that we're not losing any air through there and creating condensation, which can create this problem.
Now that was pretty much all of the significant things that I found on this home inspection, but I still took the time to go through the entire home with a fine-tooth comb.
So as a home inspector, we're always going to write up things like loose doorknobs, cracks in drywall, missing sealant around various areas, lights that don't work. These are all pretty typical and common things to find in a home inspection report. I don't have time to show you everything that I've found on this house today because I've got to get to my next inspection. You guys call me so I can inspect your next house. Stay tuned for the next video.